you all for coming. This is great. First of all, let me acknowledge that we're meeting on the stolen lands of the Salish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, and we thank them for allowing us to meet on their lands. Let you know that this meeting is cameraed for TV, live stream, and it will be, it can be seen anywhere in Canada and abroad. And I've been waiting all year for somebody to say, oh, we saw you on the TV and we want you in our movie. Hasn't happened to me yet. And if it happens to any of you, don't let me know. What else? Oh, decorum. And I'm sure you all pretty much aware of the kind of behavior that we expect, respectful listening and giving our attention to speakers. So we know that you will do that. Our first item on the agenda is the delegations. And the first one is Trish, Windsor House parent. Hello. Hi. So you have 10 minutes. And then if it's okay with you, we'll ask if there's any questions from the people. Oh, maybe the first thing we'll do, sorry, is we'll go around so that you know who you're talking to. So I'm Barb Parrott, I'm a trustee, I'm the co-chair of this committee. The chair is at a high school graduation ceremony, so that's why she's not there. Also, if I could remind you that there are some people in the room, myself included, that are hard of hearing. So if I could ask you to articulate and project your voices, that would be great.
Rob Schindel, Associate Superintendent. Aaron Davis, Director of Instruction.
Sarah Blake, Career Programs Coordinator. Carmen Cho, Trustee and Committee Member.
David Nelson, Deputy Superintendent.
Lois Chapman, Lead Trustee.
Amanda Hillis,
Debbie Movier, KP15. Shelby Coleman, BSTA.
Sophia Jo Lunny, 2017 Windsor House graduate, currently attending UBC.
Helen Hughes, Windsor House.
Levi Saunders, current student at Windsor House.
Trish Ghana, parent of 3 at Windsor House.
Hazel Bangalina and student trustee.
Swana Ing, BDSC rep.
Harjinder Sandhu, elementary principal.
Audrey Van Elstein, passer rep.
David Nix, secondary principal.
Janet Fraser, trustee.
Richard Zerby, Director of Instruction.
Alan Wong, Trustee.
Estelina Gonzalez, trustee.
Suzanne Hoffman, superintendent of schools.
Jody Langua, associate superintendent.
Meta Hamaguchi, Director of Instruction. Kara Batista, Associate Superintendent. And Joy Fisher, Communication.
Thank you. So you have 10 minutes, and then if you can, if you're willing to answer some questions, the people around the table will be asking you questions. We don't take questions from the audience, just the participants on the committee. So Rob's going to time, so go ahead.
Hi, I'm Levi Saunders. I came to Windsor House September of 2018, having spent my entire school career in mainstream programming. I made the decision to come to Windsor House after I had been told I would have to take PE in grade 10. In grade 9, I had come out as transgender, and I was feeling incredibly isolated in physical education. I found myself insecure and keeping my guard up, and I was eventually given a standing grant, which meant I would not have to take PE for the rest of the year. However, I later learned that I would have to take PE again, and I knew I would not be able to handle that emotional strain. So that is what brought me to Windsor House. I had already been considering going to Windsor House for about 3 years, and that's what brought me there in the end. As soon as I came to Windsor House, teachers adapted to my needs, and I felt like the adults in my life were hearing my needs for the first time ever. I was given many, many leadership opportunities that I had never experienced before. I was included in decisions that I chose to be included in, which gave me a profound sense of belonging and community that I had never experienced before. Windsor House offered an opportunity for me to also fully come into my dreams, which is a little bit, you know, fantasy. But ever since I was young, I have loved theater, but I have always considered it to be something not for me. It was for other people. That wasn't something I could ever truly pursue. But since coming to Windsor House, I've been able to participate in 3 shows, all playing lead roles, and experience what it's like to be in a theater intensive. I have been given so many opportunities at Windsor House that I would have never experienced beforehand, like learning skills that my parents are still trying to learn now, like time management and mediation techniques and leadership techniques. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And who's next? Helen?
Windsor House was born of necessity. My 7-year-old was shutting down. In my house on East Windsor Road, hence the name. It matured in 48 years of dynamic experimentation. We stole from every good program we came across and is now retiring. The school has a worldwide reputation as a leader in collaborative problem solving, mixed age grouping, parent participation, and portfolio-based assessment. Several staff members will be going to the Alternative Education Conference in Portland this summer as featured speakers. Over the years, many families have researched schools.
Louder? Sorry, Helen, can you speak louder?
Researched schools, uprooted their families, and moved to Vancouver to attend Windsor House. Windsor House is a community of people with modest means. We have suddenly lost our financial support. Some of our children have nowhere to go. These children are of deep concern to me. They are neurodiverse, and they simply do not thrive in most structured settings. Happily, they enrich any community that has the capacity to embrace them. They're a big part of our creative future. The rest of the children prefer to be in a program where they can make significant choices about their own lives and their community. They, in turn, support the neurodiverse children by providing balance and mixed peer groups. We are hoping that the Windsor House legacy will be the creation of programs that take the best of what we have learned in 48 years and move ahead with creative new ideas.
I'm Trish. I have 3 children at Windsor House, 10-year-old twins and a 7-year-old. It's hard for me to express what an impact Windsor House has had on my family's life. My twins began their education in a mainstream VSB school, Charles Dickens. Over time, we found out that they were struggling to learn to read and write. Finn, who had always loved stories, was starting to say, "I hate reading, I hate books." He stopped talking and became withdrawn. So we pulled them out and started at Windsor House the next year. And this was the best decision of my parenting career. Windsor House has given all 3 of my children the time and the support they needed to learn to read. All of them are now reading at grade level. And at spring break, just recently, Finn picked up Harry Potter and is now on book 4. Windsor House builds the critical skills that children need as they grow up by providing students with collaborative space, which cultivates empathy, communication, critical thinking, and problem solving. They have a freedom within Windsor House that fosters self-initiative, but alongside this, they have a grounded responsibility to others that really nurtures community. Creating community is not easy, but our children practice the skills they need every day. The truly multi-age philosophy, where children don't rank themselves by age or ability, allows students to find friends of all ages. At times they act as leaders, and other times they learn from others. Jack has truly excelled in this context and shows kindness and integrity through his leadership within the community. Finn has come back to life and knows he's heard and valued. And Molly has gone from selective mutism to literally finding her voice and her confidence. They're thriving. In a world of heightened anxiety, Windsor House's supportive environment and truly student-centered learning creates confident, successful children with their own interests and initiative. I work in the area of democratic engagement on poverty, inequality, and homelessness, and what I've experienced at Windsor House gives me a hope that I don't often feel in the broader context. To truly bring up democratic citizens, schools should be sites of democracy themselves, and this is a school that fosters critical characteristics in our children. The flexibility to face an ever-changing world, the critical thinking to question and challenge the status quo, and the creativity to come up with solutions, alternative solutions and ways of being. We need more communities like this, not less. As I consider where and how to educate my children next year, I'm struck by my incredible privilege to have experienced what Windsor House has to offer. Windsor House was an option for my family because it was a public school. My family could afford it because it was publicly funded and accessible to everyone. 80% of our students are your students, and I urge you to consider helping democratic education find a new home within the public school system here.
I've just completed my second year at UBC. I'm thriving at university. I recently returned from spending a semester studying natural resource management on Haida Gwaii. While in my first year of UBC, I completed the intensive 2-semester-long Arts 1 program. In both of the cohorts for these programs, students singled me out for my ability to speak up and elevate the conversation. I credit Windsor House with whatever praise or recognition I get in an academic setting and for my ability to keep continuing my formal education. Windsor House made up the entirety of my high school experience. I thrived there. I was able to grow and mature and learn how to work with diverse groups and to respect people's leadership and to take on leadership myself when I have something to offer. Because of Windsor House's unique democratic student-led program, I was able to, inspired by encouragement and demand from my peers, produce my own original weekly lecture series on philosophy and mediate discussion throughout, which I maintained for an entire school year. At Windsor House, I was allowed to develop, and when ready, I provided a unique service to the community. Because of these unique student-led programs that I was lucky enough to be a part of, I have a level of experience taking matters, especially the direction of my own learning, into my own hands, which is very much what university expects of you from day one. My senior year at Windsor House, university seemed like a far-off dream. I did not have the financial means to put myself through university. Until one day, I was at the Writers Guild, working my last projects for school, when I received a phone call saying, not only was I accepted into UBC, but I was being offered a major renewable scholarship that completely pays my fees. I had walked a long, hard path, and in the end, because of Windsor House, I was able to accurately represent myself on my university applications. I received the warm welcome to university that I deserved, and now I can achieve my academic goals despite the adversity I faced. Now today, I'm concerned this path is closing. Those similar to me won't have as many options when finding their way, and so will get lost or never try for the path in the first place. Because if Windsor House wasn't there for me, I really don't believe I could have brought myself to university.
Thank you very much. And that was perfectly timed. Are there any questions or comments?
Thank you through the chair. I just want to say thank you very much for your presentation. I know that your ultimate dream is to have Windsor House taken on and it to be its own facility, but given that for the next school year that isn't necessarily possible, we want to welcome you to the VSB. So I guess the question would be, how can we support you now in the transition that you're going through?
Thank you for the question, Trustee Cho. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we would love to find a home for the whole school within the VSB, but we're flexible with what that might look like, and it could start out small, just really supporting the small group of families that might not be able to find a home in any other place. I just recently got some figures actually from Jody that showed that 43 students from Windsor House have now enrolled in other schools at the VSB, but that's less than 25% of our total student population. So many of us are still scrambling. Many of us are moving out of Vancouver because we were staying in this crazy housing market just for Windsor House. Many of us are homeschooling, using distributed learning. So we're really scrambling to find something, and we would be willing to work with you to find any kind of transition model that works. Could start with 1 classroom, 2, whatever. We're very flexible.
any other questions or comments? Jen?
Just to reiterate, I don't want all trustees to feel they have to say thank you for coming, but just to reiterate, thank you for coming, and thank you for bringing the different voices from current, former, and parents and founders. And I think, talking about the student-centered learning and the collaborative and how to work together, I think, the real intent is to, as we do in the VSB for every student, is to meet the needs of the students. So, hearing that 43 students have found a place where they feel comfortable within our system, I would suggest that that opportunity is there for any student who wishes to have that discussion. And I don't want people to think that the VSB is a blank wall and you fill in this form and you apply here and you go through all those processes. I think our staff are very willing to engage, to look at the various options that are available, like through distance learning, through homeschooling, and through catchment schools and choice programs. So I hope that I know our staff are open to that, and I hope that anyone who has questions or wants to know more feels open and comfortable in reaching out.
Can I just clarify, in the distributed learning, most of the families are not registering with the VSB version of that. Most families are registering with Island Discovery through the Powell River School District. So this is a missed opportunity for the VSB to increase that student enrollment, and we would love to come here. That our preferred option would be to find a home here, publicly funded, publicly accessible with the VSB support.
I have a question. How do people hear about Windsor House? I know that Alfie Cohn knows of Windsor House. How does this happen?
Answer that. In the beginning, no one knew about Windsor House because there was no internet, there was nothing. We didn't even know about the other alternative schools that were in Vancouver. So people had to search a lot. And then with the advent of the internet, it became very easy. And we belong to the group called AERO, which is the Alternative Education Resource Organization. That's the conference we're going to. And they have done a superb job of tracking down all alternatives and putting them out, and people can access them.
But we are the only publicly funded democratic school in Canada, though there is this international movement that we're part of.
I don't want to cut anybody off that has a question, but yes, Hazel.
Through the chair, I would just like to ask what Windsor House is and what a democratic program system is.
That's a really good question, because many people, I'll let you take it, but many people think democracy is sitting in a room and having someone say, do you want to play baseball or football today? And you take a vote. But the kind of democracy that we're talking about is where you develop a sense of agency, because you can bring things up, you can take them to school council and have them voted on. You can use collaboration all day, any day, with students and with staff, where you come up with an idea and someone else says, well, why do we add this? And so it's something that's part of the daily business of the school.
Of how the school works.
Do you want to say more about what it looks like day to day?
Sure. So the biggest thing that I've noticed about the way that democracy functions in Windsor House is that students and teachers and staff are all equal. There's a certain amount of natural authority that teachers and staff have, but anybody can, anyone can bring a new idea or a new rule to the school and it will be voted on, and that's all on the same level. Students can lead any type of meeting that happens. whether it be JC, which is Judicial Council, and that's our mediation system, or school council. And that has to do with, you know, financials when it comes to the theater program, voting on props, or getting new resources, getting new things for our spaces, like, you know, just class supplies and things like that.
Well, thank you again for your presentation, and we're going to hear from the next one.
Just have some packages to leave with you.
Oh, great.
So our proposal and some of the letters that have been sent in support. I think we have 15 here, so if you can share amongst yourself, that would be great.
Thank you very much for doing that. Okay, before we start the timing, I'm going to let you introduce yourselves and not count it.
My name is, should I start? Sure. My name is Athena. I'm a mom of a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old who's currently attending Windsor House.
I'm Linda Dixon, Windsor House teacher for 20 years, currently doing a master's in education and curriculum and leadership, specializing in decolonizing democratic education.
Linda, I think you're going to have to speak up when you do your thing.
You have to excuse my cold and my already quiet voice. I'm Andre. I've worked at Windsor House for 6 years, and I also teach English at JO Summer School.
Well, welcome. Thank you very much for taking the time to come and educate us. Go ahead.
Thanks. Thank you for having me. I'm here to speak to you tonight because I believe in public democratic education. As you all have heard, on May 13th, the trustees of the Gulf Island School District gathered to close what they thought was a school. Instead, they unanimously agreed to end 48 years of successful, publicly supported democratic education in the Metro Vancouver area. In an effort to prevent that from happening, that's my kiddo! A small group of parents launched a petition to try to keep this rich model of education alive in our community. The petition has been signed by over 2,900 people from all over the world. We even heard from Gianna Clements from a self-directed education community in South Africa. She wrote directly to the Minister of Education. I'm sure a few of you wrote to the Minister of Education. I haven't heard back. I can be patient. Anyways, I would like to share something that she said about change. According to Thomas Kuhn, she writes, a shift in professional commitments to shared assumptions takes place when an anomaly subverts the existing tradition of scientific practice. She continues, in other words, we all need to see anomalies, workable alternatives, before we have the courage to let go of old ways that no longer work and innovate. No matter how much theory we read, what we really need is to be able to contact other human beings who are actively and successfully living these anomalies. We've only just begun to notice and examine the ways that schools like these are able to offer an unusual level of integration of special needs students, achieve high levels of mental health and personal and social well-being, foster creativity, diversity, autonomous motivation, and more. I'll stop there with her letter, but I want to highlight what she said about integration, because as you already heard from the previous delegation, that for a number of students, a self-directed and personalized program is the only educational model that works. We know this is true because we've witnessed it in action. We also know that student satisfaction scores in these learning environments are extremely high, and these numbers include children who have fallen through the cracks and can no longer attend regular public schools. Currently, some of these children are in the grip of fear and anxiety about what September holds. For these kids, democratic student-led education is not a program of choice, it is a program of need. For these kids, the situation is urgent. So this brings us to the question of why a secondary delegation. It's simple. Ultimately, we want our students to resume school in September. In order to make that happen, what we bring to the table is operational flexibility, creative solutions to space challenges, and educational innovation. And if I can get a little bit vulnerable here, I'm an individual who spans many areas of difference and marginalization. For me and my kids, diversity and inclusion are not just ideals, they're gateways to entry and participation. So our proposal centers inclusion, and we're also committed to the ongoing reflective practice of decolonizing the way that we do democracy. Yes, we know that a September start is a tall order, but in short, we're willing to do the work here, and we hope that you might be willing to help. Thank you.
Thank you.
I Tinisqualawan, Quets Eats, Quets Nala. Kaminam, which I am also studying the revitalization of endangered First Languages.
Can't hear
First
you.
Nations languages at UBC and with the Musqueam Band. I'm trying to say, I'm happy to see you all tonight. We are proposing a democratic focused mini school for your consideration to offer an enriched curricular program emphasizing democracy studies based on expertise from many years providing active learning experiences. What better way for young people to become skilled democratic citizens than by negotiating and deciding on issues closest to their hearts and by figuring out how to work together to bring about the kind of society they want. But participatory governance meetings, as important as they are, aren't the only ways they gain these competencies here. Some other examples are at the secondary level, debate classes, projects, and courses going deep into democracy studies globally. These rigorous studies would emphasize skills that are some of the most relevant and needed in today's world, valuing a plurality of human interests and ideas, while upholding a commitment to the idea of a shared public square as the democratic space to best work out these things. Another time-tested way we do this would be through social studies simulation games where students get to imitate adult real life together, running a town, operating their business, running for office, being held accountable to fellow citizens, deciding on taxation, and managing their finances. Some towns are even set in historical time periods like this one in ancient Athens, birthplace, one of the birthplaces of democracy. During these town simulations, students clamor to get back, coming back to school the next day, to get back to their shops and the market square to see what's going to happen next. Much of their school work here is collaboratively figuring out how to maintain a society. There is rich input here from teachers who offer sophisticated social studies concepts along with props, yet it is the students who run with these and make the experiences their own. They practice balancing competing claims and desires for the good life and decide on the very laws of their town and how to deal with lawbreakers. These are the kind of meaningful, enriched curricular experiences we could offer based on highly innovative forms of pedagogy developed and refined over decades. It interweaves best practices of BC's redesigned curriculum, balancing teacher and curriculum-driven initiatives and expectations with authentic youth-driven learning. And it is precisely what BC redesigned curriculum urges when it calls on educators to give students more control over their learning and to honor the way students think and learn. Aichsipka.
Hello. I want to, just let me know if you can't hear me very well. I want to speak to the relationship that we envision fostering between this new mini school and the Vancouver School Board. We see this as a long-term, mutually beneficial partnership. There's huge demand for alternative models of education in the city. For example, with over 1,400 applications for 600 grade 8 mini school spots each year. We're very confident that the VSB has the will, vision, values, and resources to offer democratic education as a choice for families in Vancouver, and we see that education is already trending this way, as evidenced by the new curriculum. Second, we want to work within the structures of the public school system and to partner with all stakeholders, unions, administration, trustees, the DPAC, and the District Students' Council, to ensure that the vision of the board is carried out. We are committed to making collaborative efforts with all partners to achieve desired outcomes for children and youth. One of the things that excites us most about partnering with the VSB is the clarity and forward-looking nature of this district's mission, vision, policies, and strategic plan, including the plan's primary goal to, quote, engage learners through innovative teaching and learning practices, end quote. And we especially appreciate the board's non-discrimination policy and commitment to the, quote, elimination of direct and systemic discrimination and racism, end quote, as this aligns with the inclusion and equity at the core of the model of education that we're proposing. I also want to note that the VSB's policy on anti-racism is among the strongest of any district that we know of. On the occasion of the final report of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, which calls for, quote, an absolute paradigm shift from all levels of government and public institutions, end quote, clear stances on such issues are more important than ever. Finally, we understand that space is a challenge for a number of reasons. We want to present some options to help this proposal move forward for September 2019. This is all addressed in the addendum that we have provided, so I'll just go over the option that we see as the most viable. 30 seconds. Okay. So the option that we see as the simplest and most expedient for the VSB and the one most likely to allow this program to open in September is for the VSB to take over the lease for one of our school campuses in North Vancouver from the Gulf Islands. This is a beautiful former church that's been converted into an elementary campus for the last 3 years. It comes at a reasonable cost that would leave lots of financial room for out programs, transportation, and the rental of other sites. We see this option as a good stopgap solution for the next year that would enable the VSB to open a new democratic mini school and meet some of the incredible demand for alternatives in education, while also giving the board the time needed to conduct a new LRFP process and find a permanent home for democratic education in Vancouver. Thank you.
Also well-timed, very good. I'd like to commend you for the work that you're doing at Windsor House, and also to empathize with the staff and the parents and mostly the students who now find themselves in this situation where they find out in the middle of May that their program is cut. I can't imagine the stress and anxiety that must be causing you. So thank you for sharing this with us. Any questions? Lois.
Thank you. Through the chair, you mentioned that the lease cost for this is affordable. Do you have a ballpark figure for what that would be?
Yeah, it's $4,000 a month.
Okay, and I guess rented for 10 months a year?
It goes, it's a full year lease.
A full year lease.
It's rented through the district of North Vancouver, if I remember correctly. And it's up in July, at the end of July. And the Gulf Islands has publicly stated that they'd be willing to help anyone transition into the lease.
Do you think, are there programs, it's obvious that you've done some research, are there programs in Vancouver that you think coordinate with the programs that are offered at Windsor House?
It's pretty unique. There's not much like it. The only school that I'm aware of in Canada is one called Alpha in Toronto. It's the only other public democratic school in the entire country. So the options for public democratic education are few and far between.
Oh, Hazel.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering what parts of a democratic education program is like separates it from any other program that the VSP would offer?
The educational programming is student-led and student-centered. So students have a lot of autonomy and agency in terms of shaping what their days look like, what their programming looks like, and that's done with the support of educators. So, a brief.
Okay, Hazel?
Yes.
Yep. Any other questions? I don't see any. I'd like to thank you again for taking the time to share this with us. I know we have your brief that you presented, you made available. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
And I should say, you know, this is a committee meeting. There are no decisions made per se at this meeting. So we've heard, the trustees have heard the delegation, and any decisions are made at with the full board. Okay, the next item on the agenda is career education update. Aaron, that's you and Karen.
Aaron and Karen. We just need our clicker and we'll get started. So thank you. This will be a two-part presentation. We have a slide deck that Greg will pull up in just a second. There is a one-page overview of this. I won't go into a lot of detail, but it is the two parts. Karen will talk first about an overview of career programs in the Vancouver School District and what the 5 streams of support are for career programs. And then I will provide in the second half an update of career education and the implementation of the new career education graduation requirements that come into full effect for 2019-20. Okay, Karen?
Thanks. Thank you very much for allowing me to come tonight and share what we do in career programs. I'm just going to start, I'm going to pass around our program brochures so you can have an idea, and it sort of explains in a little bit more detail what I'm talking about. So our mission in career programs is to provide meaningful opportunities for career exploration and awareness to students. And so that aligns with the goal of providing our learners with innovative and teaching and learning practices. So the programs that we offer, I've kind of grouped them all here. So the district office supports students from all the schools in our district. We have dual credit, and underneath that is Youth Train and Trades. Youth Explore Trade Sampler, Youth Work and Trades, Youth Explore Trade Skills, and then Work Experience and Job Training. So for those of you familiar with career programs, you might have remembered the term ACIT or Secondary School Apprentice. The Industry Training Authority, which is a governing body for trades training in British Columbia, rebranded their youth program to put youth at the center, or youth at the start of all their program names. So hence ACIT became Youth Train and Trades, Youth Work and Trades was formerly Secondary School Apprentice. Okay. So for our dual credit and Youth Train and Trades programs, Youth Train and Trades is considered a dual credit. Obviously in trades, dual credit can be other options. We offer 17 program partnerships with post-secondary institutions. 3 of those programs, Cook's Training and Auto Service. There's 2 Cook's Training programs at Tupper and Thompson, and then an auto service program at Britannia. All of the other programs would be students attending the post-secondary for their actual training. And the seats for those programs are based on our memorandums of understanding with the post-secondary, and it would vary from program to program. Some of them are full high school cohorts, some of them are seats in an adult program. And then our 4 post-secondary partners, BCIT, Vancouver Community College, Piping College of British Columbia, and the Finishing Trades Institute are who we have agreements with. The 17 programs are listed here. As you notice, there's definitely a trades-based bend because that's where this began, was with trades training. We're in a very unique situation in British Columbia that they need skilled trade workers. So there is, we would like to see more students join them, but for sure there's definitely a demand for these programs. And again, some of them overfill simply because we wouldn't necessarily get 16 or 20 seats in a program. For example, aircraft maintenance engineer, which is our newest program, we're allocated 2 seats per year and shared with other school districts in the Lower Mainland. I think I covered that. Oh, and I'm just going to go back to that. And the big piece around this is the students are earning high school credit and post-secondary credit at the same time, so hence the name dual credit. Okay, our Youth Explore Trade Sampler is an opportunity for students who are interested in the trades, not necessarily sure which trade they want to go into. So they have this opportunity to sort of test out a variety of trades. The program, the 12-week program at BCIT, they try 12 trades over the 12 weeks. And then Tupper Tech is run out of Tupper Secondary, and it's a full year program where students are trying out a variety of trades and also do work experience in their area of choice. So it may be that they want to do the electrical, they get a placement with an electrical company, see if that's a good fit. If it's not, they venture into another path. Youth Explore Trade Skills is a little bit more of a grassroots, starts at grade 10, and it's kind of like a tech studies class where you might have 3 or 4 different trades happening within there, that they might be doing a little bit of auto, a little bit of carpentry, a little bit of metalwork. So it's again an opportunity to explore trade options. The ITA manages that in the sense that there's a core module teachers have to follow and then additional trade specific areas. And Youth Work and Trades is our apprenticeship program. So these are students who are in high school and also working in paid positions, what we call in an apprenticeable trade, so signed as a youth apprentice. They can earn up to 16 course credits for their apprenticeship. And if they meet the criteria, they can earn a $1,000 award provided by the Ministry of Education. So while they're in high school, they're registered as a youth apprentice. They graduate with a dogwood or adult dogwood, successfully complete the 4 work and trades courses, maintain a C+ average, and complete a minimum of 900 work-based training hours while they're doing their graduation requirements. So it's quite sort of a very high demand for the students. And we were fortunate this year that about 40 of our students received their award in December of this year, and 15 more will receive theirs at the end of June. And our last piece I just want to touch on is work experience and job training. So work experience is a school-based course, an elective, where students are doing short-term job placements. And the district office supports the school-based programs with district guidelines, policies, procedures on how to manage those work placements. And then job training for students with diverse abilities. Our transition team works with these students in 3 main areas. One is supported and independent work experience. The students learn social and employability skills as well as travel training. And then they have 2 selected, so 10 students in each of the post-secondary, gateway to post-secondary and gateway to employment programs. So in total 20 students there. The Gateway to Post-Secondary is partnered with Vancouver Community College, and students will explore various pathways for their vocation that they might choose to go to after high school. And then Gateway to Employment is partnered with the Burnaby Association for Community Inclusion. And this is a way to, the goal for this program is to have students in a part-time paid position, connections with community recreation, and also community awareness engagement activities. So they might perhaps be interested in photography, so they get involved with a community group that might help them, build their photography skills, but also working on the social skills at the same time. So that's sort of, in a nutshell, the work experience. And now I'll turn it over to Aaron.
So career education update. There are actually 3 elements to career education. It runs right from kindergarten to grade 12. I'm only focusing today on the section regarding, it's highlighted in yellow, grades 10 to 12, which the theme is around preferred futures in career life development. and I will do this fast, Rob. The key change is that right now, the graduation requirement has changed from grades 10 to 12. So last year we had a change, it was called Career Life Education that came online this year. It's currently in place. And we have a course called Grad Transitions. Grad Transitions is going to be retired at the end of June and will be replaced by a course that is called Career Life Connections and includes Capstone. So this is a significant change because there is an impact at the school level about how this unfolds. So you still have the same number of graduation requirements for career education. It is 8 credits that has to be achieved between grades 10 and 12. It's just we packaged it differently in the new curriculum. So no longer is there planning 10 in GT or grad transitions. We now have career life education and career life connections with Capstone. So CLE is already in place and running. The interesting part that comes from Career Life Connections and Capstone is a flexible delivery model. And the model is actually quite different than how we currently deliver grad transitions. The 8 credits can be achieved at any point through grades 10 to 12. So the delivery model is the part that I really want to focus on today in the next 2 minutes. The CLC and Capstone components are delivered differently in that it's a 1 to 30 teacher to student ratio. Our grad transition model is typically right now staffed at about 1 to 200 because students typically will either download or meet in large groups. So CLC has a significant impact on scheduling at secondary schools for next year. We have teachers that are assigned up to 30 students. Typically, and this is one example of a delivery model where 30 students are scheduled on timetable. It appears sometime between 8:30 and 3 o'clock in the day. And students would attend initially for the first couple of weeks and then set a pattern. And then it could be that the teacher doesn't have to see the students throughout the entire process for the remainder of the course year. But there has to be continuity to the education program, including attendance and regular assessment and communication of how a student is doing. The capstone is an interesting piece because that is actually a capstone project. And so students would be working towards accumulation of something that's of high value to them that they would then share at the end of the CLC capstone period. Another possible delivery model is to take the 8 credits and split them apart across 3 years. So Killarney is an example of this, where 2 credits are offered in grade 10 for what we call career life education. Then for CLE and part of CLC, there's 4 credits that's offered in grade 11, and then a 2 credit option in grade 12 that could potentially be scheduled off timetable to give students flexibility about how they want to pursue that capstone project that they're working on with a mentor. So this is the other part that's different as well, is that the curriculum is really trying to find ways to have the community become part of the K-12 system. So how can you take the expertise that's in the community and embed it into something that's meaningful and high value for the students in their learning? CLC capstone delivery model with flexibility allows you to find different ways to address this for your local school community. Another delivery model is that you could take CLC and capstone and keep it as 4 credits. It's kind of like your traditional grade 12 math class that would run for an entire year. It shows up in a schedule, but you pair it with a specific area of focus. So for example, the model here is Law 12. And in this case, you'd actually package the 2 courses together. So you'd have the Law 12 teacher who's done that for however long, and then the following class right after in the morning or in the afternoon becomes the CLC capstone class taught by the same teacher. This is actually quite unique because now what it does is it gives the teacher and the students an opportunity to deeply explore and time within the schedule and in their timetable to possibly go outside of the school. We can go down to the law offices, the courts, wherever it may be, without worrying about impacting another class. So this type of flexibility is quite unique in CLC capstone, and Career Programs does a lot of work to try to help us figure out how to embed it. So that's the one stream of career programs, is to say, how do we reimagine career education as a graduation requirement from the previous highly prescriptive model that we used to have to one that potentially allows tremendous flexibility and relevancy for our students that is provided by the new curriculum. So Rob, I went about 2 minutes over. So at this point, Karen and I can both take questions or comments if you have any.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Shelby.
Thank you through the chair. I have
I guess more comments / just general inquiries for the future for Arian and CLC. So first of all, I want to thank all the work that was put into looking at all the options for CLC. This is one of my favorite parts of the new curriculum. I think there's so many opportunities to really give students real world simulations and life experiences so they're prepared for a rapidly changing world. We have noticed some concerns this year with timetabling that have been coming up with, I think, some of the models where it seems like some of the electives or other courses may have been cut because the CLC courses are on timetable as its own course, and we have asked the board to do a report of all of the different models for us to see if this is in fact what is happening. And we're just concerned because since the grad requirement cuts from the early 2000s, it seems like less students are taking electives. You know, more students have spares and are roaming the halls, and that's sort of why the model that has proposed, and I think it was a model that may have been proposed as at first as an ideal model of combining CLC with another course. So I guess the third one could be a way of promoting electives as well as other newer courses with CLC, and they work very well together because a lot of our electives in our schools do give students opportunities to explore different career options, and so combining them with a capstone and a CLC course could be a way of creatively looking at a new vision for secondary education with the new curriculum in Vancouver. So it's just something that I wanted to bring as food for the thought in the future. What is the VSB's vision for secondary education with the new curriculum and CLC, and how can we promote all of the great parts of our education system?
Thank you. Estrelita. Yes, thank you. I have a few questions on the trade side. So when are students actually learning about the options in the trades? What grade? Is that grade 10?
Ideally, grade 10, maybe even as early as grade 9, but definitely grade 10 moving into grade 11, because one of the pieces around taking a program like this is they have to make that decision prior to graduation. So they've made that pathway choice, so ideally would be grade 10. Yeah.
And is it sort of universal in every school that every student is exposed to the options and trades, or are we only focusing that instead?
I think that's on a school by school basis.
So who makes that determination then?
I would say fair to say the teachers in the career education courses at the school. I mean, we share the information out to them, and then how it's distributed at the school is by choice theirs.
If I could just add one piece, so through the chair, at grade 8, the vast majority of our students take what is called an applied skills rotation in almost every secondary school. So they'd be exposed to a variety of areas where there would be a very brief introduction to the concept of trades, but not from the intense focus that Karen and her team would do at the grade 10 level. So there is that awareness that is started at grade 8 to try to promote an interest in going into tech studies, home economics, and business ed opportunities.
Go ahead. So if there's a student at a high school like John Oliver and they wanted to take one of the programs that's only offered at Tupper, are they able to do that? Is that student able to?
Yes, they would apply to the program if they're selected for the program. The programs that are run in our VSB schools are run on the day 1, day 2 schedule. So they have day 1 at their home school and day 2 at their program school. The programs partnered at the post-secondary run in a different fashion. So yes, in answer to your question, yes, they can take.
spot they applied for.
Yeah. Janet?
Maybe if you could go back to the slide about the BCIT sampler program. I'm just curious about the logistics of it.
The 12 weeks?
The 12 weeks. So how does 12 weeks fit into our calendar year?
Through the chair. It's very challenging. I'll be honest, it's very challenging. So the students who would have be interested in that have applied this year for next year's program. So we work with them to try to map out how they are going to be absent from their high school in a post-secondary for 12 weeks and then return. So it goes February to May. So they come back for the last six weeks at their home school. And generally it's working out how they're going to make sure they finish all their grad credits. They do get, for that program, they do get 3 grade 12 elective credits. 3 grade 12 course credits for that program. So they're not necessarily missing out on electives, it's just making sure they get their other grad requirements complete.
And to follow up on this, there's a high school cohort shared with other districts. So 4 to 6 seats is for all the school districts or for Vancouver?
Through the chair, for Vancouver. A total of 16 in the program.
Did I see any hands? Yes, go ahead, Janet.
No one else asking questions?
Go for it.
There's a certain number of seats at various programs. In general, are there enough students to fill all the spaces that are available?
The seats at the post-secondary, where they actually attend the post-secondary, those are filled because they're limited. They might be 2 seats in a class of 16 if it's an adult course. If it's a high school cohort, we're shared with the other school districts, so they're always filled. There are in-house programs that fluctuates year to year depending on enrollment. Generally, auto service is well attended. The Cooks being 2 programs spreads them out a little bit more.
Hazel.
Thank you through the chair. If we could go back to the 3 options you guys put up for the CLC and CAPU. Yeah. So the ones that you put forward, the breaking it up into 3 years, grade 10, 11, 12, and then the CLC/capstone with the academic courses, like those options, will that be brought forward to the board to decide which one is used, or is it going to be like each school kind of decides which one they use?
Through the chair, it's a school decision about how they decide they want to package the grad requirement together. So the school community works together, that is the staff, to determine what do we believe is going to work best for our students to meet the graduation requirement and also tap into the skills and assets that they have in the building to support it.
Okay, so it's just open and
it's a school-based decision.
Okay, yeah.
I have a question. What is capstone?
How long do we have? I'll try to make it as brief as possible. So capstone, the concept of capstone is, through the chair. The concept of capstone is to provide an opportunity for students to showcase something that they're deeply passionate about that connects their passions with the learning that they've been doing over the course of their education career to date. So there can be a lot of, and also not do it in isolation. So ideally, they would also find an adult to help support them with that type of learning, whatever it may be. We actually do have examples of this that already exist in Vancouver. They're not currently called capstone CLC classes. It's because particular programs have decided that we want to have a project-based learning model where there's an opportunity for a student to showcase that learning at the end of the year. And there's a variety of sites around the school district that do it. So we're kind of ahead of the curve on that. But in this case, the big difference is now everybody's going to do it. There's a lot of uncertainty about this part because you're asking school communities to now open their doors to the broader community to maybe say, right, as the teacher of capstone, I've got a student, let's say that I'm a physics teacher, and I've got a student comes in and says, you know what, I am dead passionate about Shakespeare. And I'm your capstone teacher. I know nothing about Shakespeare. I need to now figure out what network do I need to tap into to maybe help that student find a way I become their guide, but I don't necessarily become the technical expert around the deep learning that the child is going to go into. And that's the big piece. It's around the deep learning and engagement that they have. So at the end, they can stand up and say, hey, I've got something that's really meaningful to me that showcases what I'm about and something that I've researched and explored deeply that's going to help me develop my skills for the future.
So where does the name come from, Capstone?
I was not involved in the development of it at the Ministry of Education. Somebody did, but I don't know. Actually, Suze, do you know off the top of your head?
It was there when I got there too, so.
Lois.
Capstone refers to the last stone that you put on top of a building.
Yeah.
So, on a pyramid or something, so it's the thing that ties your.
It's the ultimate conclusion.
Exactly.
Yes. Oh, very interesting. Thank you. Sorry, Hazel.
I was wondering, there wouldn't be any kind of criteria for, evaluating what you refer to as like a passion project, would there?
We have guiding documents to help support educators through that process. And we're also, one of the pieces or that career program supports is working with the teachers that are about to take this on in September to talk about how is it that we're going to assess it, what are some of the pieces and criteria. It is a graded course. Shows up.
Yes.
In having read a bunch of the capstone stuff and trying to figure out what we're doing at our school, one of the things that's in some of the literature that we're definitely going to grab hold of is that the evaluation criteria is arrived at cooperatively with the student. And so that's part of the visioning of the project itself, is on what basis will I be evaluated. And so it really promotes that ownership of learning in a very whole sense.
Esther Lisa.
Chair, does the student choose the teacher they want to work with?
Through the chair, the answer would be no. The students are assigned, just as we do a math class, in that this is the teacher that is going to take on CLC Capstone, and the students are assigned to that. Now, it could be that a school may decide that they're cohorting students by broad areas of interest. This is again around the flexibility. So if you had students that said, right, there's 30 of us and we're looking at a science technology type capstone area, and there's a staff member who's saying, yes, I'm going to take the CLC capstone course, you can cohort them together at the local level to say those 30 students are with that educator. So that flexibility exists. Again, it depends on what the 18 secondary schools, 19 counting VLN, decide how they want to cohort students.
Don't see any other questions, so thank you very much for that report. I don't think that there's any action that you're asking us to take. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is school fees. Richard.
Very good. Thank you, Trustee Parrott. Through the chair, this evening I'm simply providing a report with a recommendation regarding school fees. It is something that we review annually. It is required under the School Act that schools must publish a schedule of fees to parents, to the community for the following school year. The attachment which you would have received today electronically is the fees for every school, both elementary and secondary in the district. The way that we do that is we first issue a standardized supplemental school fee schedule, and so schools are required to fall within that fee schedule. There may be slight variations here and there. The significant change, I think, this year compared to last year is the board's decision to increase general school fees at the elementary level from $25 to $35. That covers all basic consumables. All of the fee schedules that we received from the schools do align and comply with both legislation as well as our Administrative Procedures 505. which outlines the goods and services that we may charge fees for, as well as 506, the financial hardship procedure. So all of the statements, all of the schedules that are issued to the community do contain the financial hardship clause. And of note, there are no registration fees associated specifically with enrolling in a district choice program, so no registration fees. That includes fine arts, IB programs, intensive French, Mandarin, bilingual, MAC programs. There may be fees associated with those programs once you're in, but again, those comply with the with legislation. So the recommendation is that the board approve publication of all school fee schedules for the 1920 school year.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, go ahead.
Apparently stakeholders did not receive this, so we're not sure what we're looking at.
This would have been, unfortunately, it was meant to go out yesterday. It went up today and it was posted to the public package, the board public package as attachment 4.1.
Are you saying that you would sooner, like,
well, I haven't read it, so. Okay.
It has to go out every year, so this is like the
It
last
must
possible.
go out every single year, yeah. So the process is it comes here first of all, and then it is published prior to the end of the year. Typically what schools do though is they would also repeat publication of those fees in the fall.
I have a question about the document itself.
Certainly.
I know what the supplies and the agenda is, but I don't understand what the money is for performances, workbook, and activity fee.
Very good.
Not every school has that, but
So through the chair, I'm assuming you're referring to the elementary school fee schedule?
yes, sorry.
So through the chair, typically what happens is students have the opportunity to use an agenda. And so it's part of, it's built into the curriculum, but because it is a consumable for individual student use, we can issue a fee recovery charge for that. And so that's a particularly helpful tool. For any student, however, for these books, if they cannot use one will be issued. That's part of the financial hardship. For performances, many schools certainly value bringing in performances. Those might be cultural performances, musical ones, things like this. Those are costly. So sometimes PACs will help subsidize them, but also because it is something that each individual student is consuming, we can ask them to contribute toward that. And so most of the schools that would be charging $20 or $25 would likely be receiving about 5 performances over the course of the school year. So that money is collected and put toward that. Workbooks. There are some teachers who use a workbook to supplement or enhance the curriculum. Again, no child is denied use of a workbook for any kind of financial hardship issue. And again, those would be things that would enhance the curriculum rather than run it.
And the activity fee?
Thank you. Through the chair, activity fees are those kinds of things that would typically occur in the course of supporting the curriculum. There are some schools that might offer a badminton program or a bowling program or things like this. And so it helps to offset those costs as well. Again, direct services to individual students.
Huh. I'm kind of shocked. So the performances, are they voluntary?
For students?
Students, yeah.
Typically, they would be meant to support the curriculum. So they would be as voluntary as a field trip would be, or as going to a speaker or bringing a program into a school. They're meant to enhance the curriculum and enhance student learning.
And we're allowed to charge for enhancement of the curriculum. That's not part of the court case?
Under the APs and under legislation, yes, we can. They typically run anywhere between $750 and $900 per performance.
Any other questions? Oh, Janet, sorry.
Having seen this schedule last year, it looks to me as though many of the figures are very similar to last year. Do you know if there's going to be any significant changes within the schedule?
Through the chair, yes. We've identified those individual schools where there's going to be a significant change to ensure that the public is aware of them, the community is aware of them. Typically, what they are fees that were, they're all associated with things like field trips. So they're all typically associated with camps, Quebec exchanges, things like that, that are very heavily discussed with the community prior to happening. So those would be the significant changes. There are some schools that are offering camps where they hadn't in the past. There's some that might be discontinuing something that has happened in the past. There's always going to be changes from year to year. This is meant to publish fees of things that parents can reasonably assume they'll have to pay for in the coming year.
So to follow up on that, I think, the challenge is it's much like PAC fundraising. PACs, many PACs don't want to fundraise, but at the same time, if you don't fundraise, your children don't get whatever it is you're fundraising for. And the frustration here is that because you can charge fees for these enhanced services, unless you do charge the fees, the students at the school won't get the enhanced piece of the curriculum. And you can see from the listings, different schools offer skiing or camp or activity fees or performance fees. And I think that's very challenging from the equity perspective. I think what happens, and I think it's the same as the PAC fundraising, is what you don't always see is when it's listed this way, there are a lot of other things that are happening with community groups and with individuals, sponsors or donations at schools. But it's just a frustration that, in a public education system, this is something we have to consider.
Anything else? So Janet and Carmen, and me, we're the only, are you comfortable sending the recommendation off to the board?
We do have a question about the recommendation. It says it's recommended the board approve publication of the fee schedules. And I'm curious if what we're actually doing as a board is approving publication or approving the fees themselves.
Thank you. Suzanne?
And looking at the board's policy 2, role of the board, it identifies under additional responsibilities, approve changes to student fee schedules, which would have been done in the previous meeting when you changed the elementary fee from 25 to 35. So in this case, you would be approving the publication.
There's a lot of subtleties.
No, I agree. That was one of my questions as well. So are we okay going forward? Okay. That will go ahead to the board on June. Thanks, Richard. The next item on the agenda is there's no information item requests. Trying to tell me something. Yep. So before we go,
I think you might have one.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
In the working plan, it mentioned that the food services working group will be updated to this committee on June 6th. That was mentioned on page 29 of that working plan that was just discussed in the previous meeting, which is tomorrow. And I'm curious to see when we will see that.
Chair, you'll see it in the fall at some point, some information coming forward.
Thank you. Thanks for your question. And before I tell you when the next meeting is, I'd like to thank you all committee members for taking the time to help trustees make better decisions. And I know that it's late, it's June, and we appreciate your work all year in helping us do our work. So thank you very much. Our next meeting is October the 16th, just before Halloween. So we'll see you all then. Thank you very much. And I is adjourned.